So good everyone, and welcome to this Ontario Active School Travel Network coaching session entitled Social Marketing and Active School Travel 101, Insights from an Expert. I think most of you calling in know who I am, but it's Wallace Beaton here in Ottawa. I'm the Manager of Community Engagement and Capacity for Ontario Active School Travel Program at Green Communities Canada. Just before we get started, I wanted to say that I know for all of us, this is a very unique and unusual and at various levels very challenging time, both professionally and personally. And perhaps for some of us as well, tuning into a webinar about active school journeys when those aren't possible in the province of Ontario right now seems a little unusual. Indeed, these are very unique times, and I just wanted to start by thanking all of you for choosing to join us today and continuing to be interested in growing the culture of active school travel in Ontario, which is something we all hope that we will be able to get back to again in the not too distant future. So your presence here today is really appreciated. Just before we go any further, I want to acknowledge the support of the Government of Ontario, who has provided Green Communities Canada with $3.5 million over 3 years for our Ontario Active School Travel Program. The goal of the program is simple yet ambitious: to take active school travel to the next level in the province and to make walking, cycling, and other forms of active and sustainable transportation the norm for school trips. We have a very straightforward agenda for this coaching session today. I'm going to start just covering off a couple of housekeeping items, then a brief introduction to our topic today, as well as our special presenter, Jay Kassirer, who will then be taking over for the majority of this session. And then we'll be coming back at the end. We should have about 10 minutes or so for questions at the very end. We will, as always, be keeping you on mute during the presentation. If you have any technical issues or problems with audio quality, please use the chat box and send your message to everyone. And my colleague, Selena Churro, is here and will assist you with any of your challenges. We are recording the session as always, and we will post the slides and the recording, as well as a couple of additional attachments that Jay will be referring to. And all of those will be going on the network Slack workspace probably by tomorrow morning. Jay will also be inviting everyone to answer a quick sort of hands up poll, not that different, I guess, from those hands up student surveys we're all familiar with. And for that, you will need to have the participants box open in addition to the chat box. So if you don't have that open already, I'd suggest that you do that now. So in late 2018, the Ontario Active School Travel Council established a working group on parent engagement. It is made up of a mix of council members and representatives from OAST fund-supported projects in Ottawa, Hamilton, Niagara, York Region, and Peel Region. The group, and you can see the membership there on your screen, has been gathering information about research, tools, and initiatives that could help all of us better understand and address parents' attitudinal and behavioral barriers to active school travel. We will be sharing some of the results of our research in the not too distant future. One proven approach to the challenge of changing parental decision-making about the journey to school is social marketing. Not to be confused with social media communications. Social marketing seeks to develop and integrate marketing concepts with other approaches to influence behaviors that benefit individuals and communities for the greater good. This coaching session will help you develop a basic understanding of social marketing, or build upon what understanding you already have, and how it has been and can be effectively applied to strengthen active transportation and active school travel. As I mentioned at the top, most of the coaching session is going to be led by our special presenter, Jay Kassirer. Jay is an internationally recognized social marketing consultant, trainer, and web publisher with 25 years of experience applying community-based social marketing to active transportation behaviors. He has contributed to the development of many outreach programs, including Green Community's Active and Safe Routes to School program, the forerunner of Ontario Active School Travel, as well as Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Sustainable Community Planning Initiative. He is the lead or co-author of several publications, including Changing Transportation Behaviors, a social marketing planning guide, as well as 80 articles and case studies on travel behavior programs. He publishes the widely acclaimed Tools of Change website and was twice awarded the International Outstanding Contribution to Social Marketing Award. So I now have the pleasure of turning the presentation over to Jay. Jay, I have unmuted your mic. I will stop sharing my slides so that you can bring up your presentation. Over to you.
Can you see my presentation up full screen at the moment?
Not yet, Jay.
Not yet. Interesting. Maybe it's, let me see if I can, that's the screen I'm doing. Oh, I probably have to take the share screen. There we go. And go over to, here we go. Let's do that. How's that?
And there we are. Yeah, I can see your opening slide.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. And just, I guess I figure out, you'll have to tell me about hands then, because I won't be able to see them. So just to start with, to help me get a better understanding of the group, can you open up then your participant screen and in there click on the hands up for the number of people who have heard of social marketing before? And Wallace, can you tell me what the number is?
I'm just having to eyeball it, Jay. I would say, yeah, a few people haven't responded yet. You use your checkbox, folks, or the hands up icon, whichever you might have. I'm going to say about 3/4.
Okay.
Jay?
If the people can put their hands down then, if they would. How many people have been to our Tools of Change website? What does that look like, Wallace?
Considerably less. I'd say about 1/4.
Okay. And so maybe this will be somewhere in the middle. How many people have read a book or taken a training on social marketing?
Yeah, I'd say we're down to about 10%.
Okay. The other direction. Well, great. So this should be quite good for you then, because this I've designed the training for people who have less than 3 years. I mean, it's a 101 training, so it's designed for people with less than 3 years of related experience conducting audience research, using it to develop social marketing strategies, or measuring program impacts. And if you don't think you're doing that, then while we're going through the presentation, just think about the school travel planning initiative that you're a part of. I do want to emphasize that this is an introductory webinar with the full range of backgrounds that you all have in only 40 minutes for the presentation. It's just not practical to go into full depth. We'll have time for some Q&A at the end of the talk. And in addition, for those with more experience, I will show links to more advanced materials, and I'll make specific points related to active school travel that you might want to consider further. There's 5 sections to what I'm going to cover. The first is going to be basics, methodology, exchange theory. Then we'll go into knowing your audience, then stages of change. Number 4, we'll look at some specific tools of change. And then number 5, I'll just briefly mention some resources and we'll go into Q&A. So, starting with the basics, what do we mean by the term social marketing? I'll start by saying that it's a way of looking at things, a methodical, evidence-based process, and a set of tools. This is the globally endorsed definition of social marketing that Wallace read just a minute ago, developed in 2013. And you'll see that it's an approach that's based on marketing concepts that have stood the test of time but also other approaches for influencing behaviors. And we're focusing on behaviors, not just attitudes and awareness. And of course, it's all for the benefits of individuals, community, and the greater good. The definition comes with an add-on paragraph that speaks directly to ethical considerations, audience research, segmentation, and equitability. Social marketing is based on a number of theories. I've listed some of the more popular ones here as examples. Now I'll be introducing exchange theory in just a few minutes, and stages of change just a little bit after that. And if you're interested in learning more about any of these theories, I do discuss them briefly in this report that's just down at the bottom. And again, that'll be in the list of URLs that you will get after the session. Now, if marketing is one of the parents of social marketing, well then social science and policy would be the other. For example, that's the background of my colleague, Doug Mackenzie Moore, who is an environmental social psychologist. One of his contributions to social marketing has been to introduce social psychological tools that I call the tools of change. Doug is the co-author of my Tools of Change workbook, on which the Tools of Change website and these instructional webinars are based. Doug coined the term CBSM, community-based social marketing, which is a particular brand of social marketing that emphasizes direct contact among community members, the removal of barriers to action, and the use of a set of proven synergistic tools. For more details on distinguishing social marketing from other things, I recommend these two online handouts. Again, after the presentation, you'll all receive an email with the URL. Actually, I'm sorry, Wallace said he would post that on your Slack group, and you'll see there the URLs for these handouts. Okay, this is the first poll, Wallace. How do you bring up polls? Here we go. So if people can please fill this out, which of the following is not a defining focus of social marketing? So one of these is not. If you can click on that and then press submit. And
just
Wallace,
wait. Yeah, few more votes coming in. I'll give everybody another 10 to 12 seconds, and I'll post the results.
Great.
Last call. Okay, I'll bring up the results now for you, Jay.
Here we go. Oh, wow, this is great. This is the best I've had for years. So what you know is that social media like Facebook, that's not a defining aspect of social marketing. The other three, or two really, are, of course. And so there's often a confusion about this, which is why I'm bringing it up. And in fact, social marketing, or social media rather, is just, I'm gonna go back to here. There we go. Is just one of many communication channels that social marketers use. In fact, it's just part of mass media within a whole bunch of different types, as appropriate to each product, or project rather. Now, where does social marketing fit on the continuum of interventions? At the left-hand side of this chart, you have a situation where your target audience is simply unaware of the behavior you are promoting. The behavior is easy to do, and your audience may even have some motivation to do it. In such a situation, information alone may be enough to change behavior. For example, if a school shifts the location of its bike racks, you may only need a temporary sign where the racks used to be, telling people where they are now. We call this the tell me, show me approach. At the right-hand side, you have the opposite situation, where existing behaviors are entrenched. It's difficult for your target audience to change them, and they may have little motivation to do so. In that case, if society believes strongly enough in the behavior, for example, that people should use seat belts or self-isolate, it may set laws requiring the new behavior. We call that the make me approach. Social marketing fits between these two extremes. There are some barriers to doing the new behavior and also some motivation for doing it. Social marketing is not only helps your target audience see the benefits of doing the behavior, it also helps them to overcome any barriers to action. That's why we call it a help me approach. You can get a greater proportion of your target audience doing the behavior than you would get using information alone. And you can also give people, get them rather, to comply with laws, and in advance of passing new laws, you can get people to be more supportive of them. Based on what you know about social marketing, would you say that the Ontario Active School Travel Initiative incorporates social marketing? Please fill out this school travel planning. I'm going off an old note here for some reason. Does school travel planning incorporate social marketing? So we'll bring up the next poll. See what people think.
So votes are coming in. I'm going to give everybody again another 15 or 20 seconds. Only 14 people are being shy here. Anyone else want to wade in? Last call for a vote. Oh, a couple more.
So people aren't quite as sure on this one.
Yeah, I think there's more hesitation.
Yeah. Okay, here it comes. Somewhat, it has some element. Okay, people are hedging their bets, maybe ostensibly, but mostly people are going in that direction. And let's go take a look actually for ourselves at this point. I have to go back in. Here we go. So, above all else, social marketing is a proven evidence-based methodology for bringing about behavior change based on a deep understanding of our priority audiences. So let's see if school travel planning follows the methodology. Number one, form a team. Check. Number two, target behaviors. Well, let's see. Children, you want them to be walking and cycling to school, and the parents, you want the parents to encourage the children to do so. We'll come back a little bit to this later. It could be a little more precise, but yeah, you've got your target behaviors there. Your target audience is, again, the children, the parents. It could be a little more refined, how close they live to school, whether they've recently moved, if they're new to school, those kinds of things, but you know pretty much who you're going after. Number three, okay, what kind of barrier and benefit research do you do? Can you please put that into the text box? And Wallace, can you read out what people are saying about the kinds of barriers and benefit research that they do? And maybe you can answer that a little bit too, because you know.
Sure. I'm just waiting to see whether anyone wants to beat me to the punch. Nope, nobody's fingers feel like typing right now, Jay. Oh, can you repeat the question one more time, Jay?
Yes, what kind of research do you do on what gets in the way of people, the kids walking and cycling to school, and what they and their parents get from doing that? I call that barrier and benefit research.
So we've got responses like perceived safety, the walkabout, the family surveys. Yeah. Responses about the surveys that we conduct as part of STP.
Yes.
Also parent council, so engaging with parent councils at schools that are participating.
Absolutely. So you're doing that. And I also want to mention at this point, so we're at step 3 here, gathering information. And the step 3 and step 2 are they go iteratively with each other. As you learn more about your audience, you're able to segment and prioritize them. which may lead to further research questions. Okay, once you do that, step number four is to set objectives. So do you have measurable objectives? Again, if you can put that in the chat. Anyone set measurable objectives in their program? So you're going to reduce car traffic by a certain percentage, or increase walking or cycling by a certain percentage over a given school year.
We have one response. We set goals of how many people we engage.
Okay, so this is a goal, but it's a process or output goal rather than an outcome goal.
Okay, we do have responses like increase walking and cycling, the number of schools participating, number of kids walking to school, reducing traffic.
Okay, so there you can see some actual outcomes. And so saying reducing it would be a general objective. To be a measurable objective, we'd want to say we would want to reduce it by a certain amount. If we don't make it, well, okay, fair enough. We'll try to figure out why we didn't do so.
And one that's important, Jay, we also set goals of how many people say they feel safer walking to school. So it's not just about the number, but the perception of the journey.
So once you've set your objectives, then we go ahead and develop strategy. And your school travel plans are strategies for having more children walking and cycling to school. So we can check that one off. Number 6, have you established program partnerships? Check. In fact, creating a regional or local steering committee is one of the first things you do in your STP process. Okay, moving on to 7. Have you pre-tested your messaging before you go ahead and send out your emails or your brochures or your ads or whatever? Anyone done that?
Leslie and Waterloo said some of them. We have a response only internally with staff.
Okay. So that gives you not exactly a random sample using your own staff, but it's better than nothing. And of course, you could do the same kind of thing, just sample some people. If COVID wasn't going at the moment, you could do it with just an intercept survey in line, but you could phone up a few people even with COVID on. So yeah, you can go ahead and test some stuff out. And then how about people pilot testing the approach, where you actually go ahead and do it with one part of your community, or maybe just one school, and then you go to more schools. Maybe that's happening in your city. Certainly it's happened with this program, because I've been watching it for over 20 years, I think now, and it started off and it has morphed over the years to become more effective and timely. So, and then number 8, implement, evaluate, and improve. And so I guess I'll just ask this question. When you are doing, I know you're evaluating, because you mentioned that earlier, that you have, you do the after surveys, and you're doing things to check and see how people are doing. But are you testing one thing against another to see what works better? That's a question. Are you testing out program enhancements so you can improve your program over time?
My hunch would be, Jay, that many of us are doing that, at least for components of the school travel planning exercise, perhaps not revisiting the entire model, but certainly
sure. Well, that's how you do it. In fact, you take
a
you take a component, you try to improve that, and you see if you get a better result, and you compare that to how it worked when you had the other component before. So I think what you can see then is that you are following the 8 steps of social marketing, and I would certainly say that your program is a social marketing program, or makes use of social marketing's methodology and many of its tools as well. Could you use them even more effectively? Absolutely, and I hope you'll get a chance to to see how you might be able to do that as we go through the presentation today. Before we leave, I also want to say that these are the 5 steps that Doug Mackenzie Moore has in his CBSM methodology. Many of you will have know his methodology. You're wondering how it compares with that. So I'll just say that too. Okay. Now, exchange theory is one of the central theories of social marketing. It says that for people to change their behavior, the benefits from doing the behavior must be greater than the costs or the barriers. And this is important, it's usually done unconsciously. Yeah, people don't know their motivators and barriers, but they're still doing that calculation in their head all the same. Like a small shopper, we're all surrounded by many options of what to buy, what to do, but we keep on walking until we see something that promises benefits that are worth the costs. A table like this can help you organize and assess the key elements of that exchange. The left-hand column lists the costs or barriers, and the right-hand column lists the benefits or motivators. Let's start with a simple example. When you buy a Pepsi, you pay some amount, as shown in the left-hand column, and if you think it's too expensive, you won't buy. Vendors have had to learn ways of overcoming or reducing the cost barrier, for example, through limited time discounts, incentives, and sampling. Now, if you look in the right-hand column, you'll see the main benefits, and they go well beyond the functional benefits of quenching thirst and good taste. How does Pepsi design effective messages? By connecting emotionally and otherwise to each of these key motivators. Since this presentation is part of a contract I'm doing for the Parent Engagement Working Group, to illustrate my points, I'm going to focus on a group of behaviors that we want parents to do to support their children walking and cycling to school. And I'm just going to come out of full screen, if I can do this, here we go. I want to continue doing, I want my screen sharing still. Share screen, okay. Share. Oh, I guess I'm going to have to take, let me see, I'm going to try it this way, see if this works. Okay, so, but I don't want this one, I want the one before. There we go. Okay, so you should now be able to see me typing, is that right?
Yes, I can, Jay.
Okay, so my question to you is, what are we going to put here? So what would be the things that are the barriers that the parents have to pay if their kids are going to walk and cycle to school?
I can read some out. Time.
Time.
Yeah, we've got changing their routine.
Changing routine.
Yeah, keep it coming, folks, on the chat box. Worries about safety.
Safety. And while we're here, I'm just going to mention time. You can sort of explode time into 2 things. There's how long, and then, because there's only so much time in the morning, it's kind of related to this other thing, but it's a little different, and that's getting to school late, getting to work late.
So it's time and timeliness.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
Suggestion here, choosing to spend time with one child over another who may go to a different school.
Okay. One versus another.
Fighting with reluctant kids, so maybe conflict with your child.
Sure, and I'm going to go into changing the routine and the whole thing about the morning routine and conflict. Morning routine and conflict. I'm going to kind of put them together there.
Belief about what a good parent is.
Okay, we're getting into some interesting ones here. I'm going to see if I'm able to go home here for a second and make this smaller. Okay, so what a good parent is. And so if this is a barrier, then a good parent is not one who does that. A good parent is a parent who does something else. We'll get back to that in just a minute. I'm going to put this as an aside. Anything else?
Yeah, we have convenience, the big C word.
Convenience. So they may find that it's inconvenient for their to walk and cycle the kids to school. Anything else?
No, several folks seconding other suggestions that have already been made. So
okay, so what are the benefits when their kids walk and cycle to school?
oh, we had one other under parents pay. I think it's worth typing in, adding in J is weather and the cold.
Weather, yes. So what do they pay? So there's a whole bunch of things in there. There's time inconvenience. Maybe they're concerned about the kids' health. I mean, weather is not what they pay, but they have to deal with the weather. And so weather can be a barrier, absolutely. Yeah. These are all things that can be barriers to active transportation. Moving then to what the parents get from walking and cycling.
Lots coming in there. So
the kids doing that.
Physical activity.
Who? Maybe. The parents or the kids?
Lisa, I'll let you specify what you meant. Graduated independence, that would be for the children, of course. And ready to learn. Less stress from traffic. Improved health, I think that would fall under physical activity, perhaps. Quality time with their children.
Hold on. Physical activity, health, and then the one you just mentioned is?
Quality time with their children.
Okay.
That one's similar to independence, so we'll go over that. Lisa confirmed she was talking about physical activity for both parents and children. Clean air, so fresh air, clean air. Environmental benefits, I think you could sum that up as. And we have mental health benefits.
Yeah, I thought that was ready to learn. That maybe one is short term and the other one is long term.
Yeah, or perhaps one is academic benefit and the other is mental. I mean, they are obviously tied together. So.
Okay, yeah.
Reducing traffic congestion.
Okay, I'm just going to have to, make this a little smaller too. There we go.
And opportunities to socialize.
Traffic. Traffic. Congestion. And then socialize, which
yes, opportunities to socialize.
Time together, but yeah, so I'll put it separate. Okay.
Also have, similar to perhaps the socialization is community connection, knowing your neighbors. I think that.
Knowing your neighbors, okay. So this is a pretty good summary, I think. You know what the motivators and the barriers are for the kids. And what the focus group research from Metrolinx pointed out is that when we look at, on the left-hand side, at these parents' pay, those things are much more specific, tangible, and compelling than the benefits on the right-hand side. Now we need to somehow make that balance work, but it just seems like it's heavy on the right-hand side. So, on the on the left-hand side, is what I meant to say. More compelling, more immediate. So, how is it that we're going to change that? And let me just skip by this next one here, which I had some notes for myself, and go on to this one here. At this point, I'm going to switch it around now. Instead of looking at walking and cycling to school, I want to look at driving the kids to school. So that's the competition, if you like. That's what they're doing at the moment. And these ones that we want to convert, at least, these parents. And so there's a pain spot that came out, was very clear. That's the craziness at the drop-off and pickup points. Parents don't like that. And if somehow that could be reduced, that would be a kind of, I think, a more immediate benefit that they could get their heads wrapped around. But the other thing too is, you know, they think that it's safer and more convenient to drive, but as you know, it often isn't. And so I raised the question, can we actually get the parents who live close enough to school to see that it really is more safe and more convenient if they either ride or cycle with their kids or let them do it on their own if they can. And so we have to get through those barriers of, well, is it safe? If the infrastructure really is safe, is it attitudes, safety skills with the kids? If we give the kids safety skills, will the parents notice? And I'll get back to that. So the whole thing of safer and more convenient, we can maybe turn that around in some instances and get parents to reevaluate and say, hey, no, it actually is safer and more convenient. And not only that, but the whole thing that came up earlier, one way to show my love and care for my children. And I tripped on this when I was reading Elise McCann's presentation from Enviro Center of Richard LaRouche's book. And, you know, she used these words that his research was showing that people drive their kids because it's one way to show their love and care for their children. And I think that's a very basic, central, strong motivator for many parents. They want to do the right thing for their kids. And as you know, it often is not the right thing to be driving them to school. And so if we can take something like that and switch that around, now it's always harder to switch things around. How do you do that? I'll get into that more when we look at stages of change theory. But, and I noticed, by the way, that I am not in full screen mode. So I'm going to go back to that just to slideshow. Start here. There we go. Okay. So, and with the craziness at drop-off and pickup points, if we could make it so that the kids who are walking and cycling or walked and cycling, if they don't have that craziness, and it's just the parents who are dropping off their kids, you know, that would also work to help shift people over. But I don't want to belabor a point, so let's keep on going here. What I'm wanting to be saying here is that starting with the left-hand column, you want to emphasize, when you're doing social marketing, what we do is we emphasize or increase the perceived benefits of doing the behavior that we're promoting to make it more attractive, and we de-emphasize or decrease the benefits of doing the current or alternative behavior to make it less attractive. Conversely, looking at the right-hand column, you want to reduce the costs or barriers of doing the behavior you're promoting and increase these for doing the current behavior. Otherwise, people won't make and won't maintain the change. If you're talking about a pull strategy, this is what we're talking about here, is making it so that it will naturally pull people in this direction. I want to just pause for a second and see how I'm doing pacing-wise. So Wallace, can you bring up this last quiz just to get people's sense of that, please? Wallace?
Yes, everyone should see the poll.
Oh, I don't. Whoops.
Okay, I'm not sure why I launched the poll, but I don't see any votes appearing, so I'm not sure. we may have to skip this one, Jay. I'm
yes,
not sure
fair
why.
enough. But what we can do instead is if people will go over to the what do you call that box again? The contacts box, is it?
Participants. Yeah, the chat box.
Well, in participants, people can say too fast or too slow, can't they?
Yeah, we've got lots of people in the chat box so far. It's all good, Jay.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to know. Okay, so marketers are keenly focused on their priority audiences. understanding their motivators and barriers. In 2 Texas towns, bicycle helmets were given away to school children, kindergarten to grade 8, with bike education and incentives for using the helmets. And helmet use increased from 3% to 38%. That's the bottom left to that top middle of the blue spike. And then you see it goes down the year after, down to 5%. So why did it happen? Using a survey, the program found out that a large majority of participants, 3 in 4, thought that their friends would not approve of the helmets. And about the same number had parents who modeled inconsistent helmet use. Many student bike helmet programs today, having learned from such errors, ensure that helmets are tested for target market appeal, that students have a choice of helmets, and that parents are also engaged in the program to provide better modeling. How do you find out what these motivators and barriers are? Not what you think they are, your hunches, but what they really are? Well, social marketers typically start with a literature review, that's the top left box, to find out what's already known. And part of my work with the Parent Engagement Working Group has been to review and add to their literature review, or they call it environmental scan. Next, you move to qualitative primary research, like focus groups, and I mentioned the ones that the Metrolinx had done recently, group discussions and interviews, where you can ask some people from your target audience what's true for them. Qualitative research is exploratory and subjective. You can easily explore details, but you can't easily generalize to a broader population. And that's one of the issues with the Metrolinx work. It's really great work, and it's qualitative, so it's very hard to generalize from there to the rest of the GTHA, let alone the province. Quantitative research methods like surveys are a perfect complement to qualitative research. You can't as easily explore at length, but if you've done your qualitative research first, you will have already uncovered the options that you want to test with your survey. The addition of the qualitative approach allows you to use more powerful tools for generalizing your findings to the rest of your audience. In this case, both within the GTHA and province-wide. At the survey stage, you want to use scaled answers where possible, not just to find out what's out there, but how strong each of these motivators and barriers is. Our formative research also helps us to prioritize our audiences, to focus our resources on a smaller number of people and offer the most appropriate exchanges for different segments, both of which increase program effectiveness. Now, what does the research say about the types of parents and families that have been driving their children to school and are more likely to start encouraging walking and cycling instead? Well, parents are generally more likely to support their children, as you know, walking and cycling to school when the commute is shorter. And we also know that new residents and families who are new to a school are already changing their transportation habits, and they're generally receptive to adopting new ones. And you can get more details on this in the Portland's Smart Trips Welcome case study on tools of change. By the way, this and all of the other case studies in this presentation can be found on our Tools of Change website. And all of the case studies report measured impacts. In this case, drive alone trips decreased 10.4% among new residents, and walking, biking, and the use of transit rose 13.6%. And before I leave formative research, I want to emphasize this is not an optional part of the social marketing process. If necessary, use a less expensive, quicker approach, an option that will work for you in your budget and time, like hands up and intercept surveys. Now, earlier on, I promised I'd take a look at how we can get parents to reevaluate the mistaken belief that makes them drive their children to school. And that's next, as we discuss stages of change theory. Prochaska and DeClement's Stages of Change model provides a well-researched tool for segmenting target audiences by readiness for change, and then for selecting strategies and tactics that work best at each stage. It's particularly helpful where significant barriers to change extend the length of the behavior change process, which we see with the commute to school. This model divides a major change of behaviors into 7 stages. The first of these stages, shown in red, is pre-contemplation. A lot of parents are probably at this stage. They're the ones who don't respond to your communications. They don't see enough benefit to bother paying attention. They have no intention to change their travel behavior in the foreseeable future, and they think they're doing the best thing for their children by driving them to school. They tend to magnify the barriers to having their children walk and cycle to school and to discount the benefits. And they avoid reading, talking, or thinking about doing things differently. They're often best engaged through emotional rather than rational appeals, which is one of the main comments from the Metrolinx work. Additional synergistic ways to engage people at this stage include, and you've been doing some of these, competitions, incentives, norm appeals, motivational interviewing, and messengers from within their personal networks. And because you work in a school environment, you have the additional option of involving parents or custodians in some way in class assignments. Note that commitment and reminder strategies used at this stage are likely to backfire. So those of you who are into CBSM and, oh yeah, commitments, and you can't use it with these people yet. They are not yet ready to act. It'll just turn them off. Save those tools for later stages. The second stage is contemplation. Parents at this stage are aware that driving their children to school may not be the best solution and are starting to look at both the pros and cons of alternative options. They're ambivalent about changing their travel behaviors. Parents at this stage will still tend to magnify the barriers to having their children walk and cycle, though. So at this stage, you can increase the rational content of the messaging to correct misconceptions, communicate ways you've recently lowered the barriers, and engage parents to reevaluate their barriers. The third stage of change is preparation. Parents at this stage are motivated and planning to let their children walk or cycle to school in the immediate future. They may even have undertaken small steps in that direction, like buying a new backpack for their children or participating with them in a safety course. These are the parents who you should be recruiting for action-oriented engagement approaches. They're particularly influenced by setting goals, ways of reducing the barriers, learning new or substitute behaviors like you're teaching them, and by helping relationships like the ones you develop with them through the schools. This is the earliest stage at which commitment and reminder strategies should be used. And don't forget, if appropriate, ask for a number of increasingly demanding agreements to build engagement over time. Parents at this stage are still preparing to change. If the key barriers have not been overcome, and if it looks like it will be too difficult for their children to walk and cycle to school, they may get frustrated and easily slip back to one of the 2 earlier stages. This can be countered by reducing the perceived barriers and by providing helping relationships and opportunities for parents to practice encouraging their kids. At the next stage, action, parents encourage their children to walk and cycle to school on an ongoing basis. Norm appeals continue to be important, as does encouraging parents to notice, remember, and be influenced by positive experiences from their children walking and cycling to school more. As time goes on, perhaps as the weather changes or parents get busy or sick, some families may regress to earlier travel habits. And this can be mitigated to some degree by monitoring for and helping those parents in relapse. And as time goes on further, some parents may even reach a stage where they're no longer tempted to relapse. Now, thinking about the wording and pictures in your program material, and while you also look on your screen and take a look at these stages we just talked about, which stages of change are your materials particularly appropriate for? And are there any gaps there where you don't have materials that have been prepared for people who are at that stage? Please go ahead and put your answers into the text box. And Wallace, if you'll let me know what people are saying, please.
Yes, I'm tempted to start typing, but I'm resisting.
Yes, I think I know what you would say.
Just repeat, perhaps again.
Okay, so
Jay,
if you look at these 7 stages I've just gone through, and you ask yourself, do my program materials, are they designed for people at that stage? And I'd ask you to see if there's a stage in there, at least one, maybe more, that your program materials are not really designed for.
So a comment from Colleen Cooper in Waterloo. I think a challenge is that various parents are at various stages and we don't always know who is at what stage. David says most tools are focused at the rational preparation stage.
Exactly, preparation, action, maybe contemplation a little, but you don't go back as far as pre-contemplation. And that's what the focus group results from Metrolinx was saying. You don't have emotional messaging out there. You're not going to get these pre-contemplators who don't want to listen to you by telling them facts that they don't want to hear.
Yeah, Lisa Niagara also, most are for people in contemplation.
Most of their are designed for people in contemplation.
Yes, most of their communications tools are for the contemplation stage.
Yeah, okay. And so the recommendation from Metrolinx was consider going to more emotional, and you can use more emotional at a number of different stages, but certainly at the pre-contemplation is particularly important as our school exercises and involving the parents directly, so that they get past the fact that they're not interested. And then once they're into contemplation, you have a chance. Still, emotional messaging can be helpful, but you can be having more facts in there. And as you go farther and farther into action, then it's more to do with how you're helping people. Although, if in terms of maintenance, Pepsi continues to have lifestyle ads. So there's still always some emotional appeal to the fact that you're doing the right thing and, all of that.
Right. Interesting comment, Jay, to add, David, pointing out, and I personally would agree with him, that our largest audience is at the pre-contemplation stage.
Yeah, those are the ones that you still haven't got yet, and they're still the largest audience. And I would agree with that, probably.
They are also primarily the parents that do not complete the surveys that many of us conduct at the school level.
That's right. So if we are counting on those surveys to find out what the barriers and benefits are, we may not get the answers from those people.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So continuing on, I want to say we have 2 case studies on tools of change of programs that use stages of change theory extensively. One is the Bob Martin case study of Health Canada's television ads for smoking cessation. The other, which is more relevant, is Love to Ride, which promotes cycling to work. Love to Ride has modified the traditional stages of change slightly for its purposes. This slide shows how the program segments its audience by stage of change from pre-contemplation at the bottom, through contemplation, trial, getting a bike, riding occasionally, riding regularly, and then finally riding to work. And as we've been discussing, the barriers to active transportation tend to be different at each stage of change. So you can't just say, well, these are the barriers. In fact, it turns out, that they're different. No, not only for different people to some degree, but they're also different at different stages. Love to Ride participants identify which of the barriers at each stage apply to them, and the program responds accordingly. For example, non-cyclists who must get their bicycles may face lack of money and uncertainty about what to buy. And for them, the program provides access to local bike hire schemes, business bike pools, and tax incentives, all using a smartphone app. Those who identify as lacking confidence see announcements about free face-to-face cycle training for adults tips and tricks, guided rides, and things like that. The participants self-select their main benefits and barriers from a list on their phones when they're joining the program. And then the program takes it from there and feeds back what's appropriate for them. In our Love to Ride case study, 54% of non-cyclists at baseline were 3 months later cycling at least once a month, and 35% were cycling to work at least once a week. Now, one of the things that makes CBSM so pragmatic is its use of proven synergistic tools of change. You can get guidance and case study examples for many of these in the Tools of Change section of the Tools of Change website. I'm going to talk briefly about two of the most important tools, lowering barriers and norm appeals. And I better just quickly check timing-wise. We're at 3:27, Wallace.
Yes.
And what time is everyone planning to finish?
Well, we had scheduled this for an hour, Jay, so I think if
we started about 10 minutes into the session.
Yeah,
so I've still got a few things to go, but I can, we don't have to cover them if people may have other things they need to do afterwards.
I'll ask you maybe just to accelerate. We'll move as quickly as you can through and get to the Q&A.
Okay, that's what I will do here. So let me say that, from those surveys I was talking about, you can figure out the priority motivators and barriers. We were talking about safety skills earlier. And so Bike Smarts is another of the program's case studies on tool change. And one of the things with bike safety is the parents have to perceive that the safety has increased. It's not enough for the kids to have increased their safety. And one of the best ways to do that is to involve the parents in a way that they can see for themselves that the kids have increased their safety skills. I'll leave it at that. The other thing I want to say is in terms of the morning rush, that is a point of pain for parents. And if there was a way, I looked and I couldn't find any programs that specifically do that, but if you could help parents and their children with the morning routine rather than complicating it as part of what you do, you may be able to attract people that way too. My final comment on lowering barriers is that we need to keep lowering them until active transportation is the no-brainer, easier, and more convenient option for parents and their children. Norms, most of you know about norms, so I won't go into detail. There are some of the most powerful tools that we can use for these reasons, but you can go back and take a look at the notes. What I will say is it's really important to have descriptive norms and injunctive norms matching. And so there's a risk that they can backfire if they don't. The descriptive norms are the perceptions of prevalence, what's commonly done. If you go to school and you see a whole bunch of people dropping off their kids at the door, that is going to make you think that that's really prevalent. You don't want parents dropping the kids off at the door. You want them dropping them off a little farther away where they're not going to be seen. What you want to show is all the people who are dropping off their bikes at the door. That's going to increase the descriptive norm that you're trying to get across, which is going to match your injunctive norm, which is what you're trying to encourage people to use active transportation to school. Okay, today we've looked at some of the fundamentals of social marketing, including exchange theory, the need for audience research, stages of change theory, and the synergistic tools of change that are stressed by CBSM. And I'm just going to close by suggesting some resources for you. My website, Doug's CBSM website. This planning guide that we did specifically on transportation for Transport Canada, the URL for this guide, again with those URLs that you'll get tomorrow on the Slack channel. If you're interested in social marketing, I really recommend you check out the Social Marketing Association of North America. And that's it. That brings us to our Q&A, or however much time we have for something like that at this point.
Great. Thanks so much, Jay. if you could just unshare your screen and I'll bring mine back up. So we are at 3:30, if not just a couple of minutes after. No, right at 3:30. I know that some of you will have to start to drop off the call, but this is an opportunity for you to ask any questions of Jay. We're going to ask you to use use the chat box to do that. If anyone has questions that they would like to put to Jay, I'm now for some reason not able to see the chat box, which, okay, isn't Zoom always an interesting challenge? Perhaps I could ask either perhaps Selena or Kate, my colleagues, if you're able to. I have lost the ability to view the chat box.
Wallace, it's Selena. I can read out the questions.
Okay, please do, Selena. Thanks.
So we have a question from Leslie in Waterloo. How can we address parents in all phases with single messages? We don't get a lot of chances to address them.
I think it's really hard to address parents in all stages with single messages. And I would not encourage you to do that. One of the lessons of social marketing is that you're much more effective if you can narrow into a tighter audience and focus on them. You can do one particular message to a particular audience, and then when you get your next chance to do a message, you could do that to a different audience. That's one way of handling that. Another way is one message that has a number of hooks in it and then takes people to different places where they would get different resources for them, depending on how they answered that.
Great, thanks, Jay. I've rediscovered the chat room. So the next question from David, can you give an example of competition versus commitment?
Competition versus commitment. Okay, so if I ask you to, like, I have a class and I'm going to ask the kids, okay, who's willing to join this activity? And we're going to do it for 8 weeks or something. Let's say it's optional. The people who agree to do that, they've committed to doing it. They have said that they will do it. That's commitment. Competition would be, okay, we're going to compete with the other class and see how many of them will do it versus how many of us will do it, or something like that. You don't have to have anyone else on commitment. You can just commit to do it yourself because you want to do it.
Okay. Question from Lisa in Niagara. I wonder if you have suggestions for messaging right now to parents about practicing the walk to school while their children are out of school. What would be the specific audience for this? Example, pre-contemplators.
Ooh. If you're trying to get the parents into the habit of walking kids to school when school is out, I don't know that you can get pre-contemplators to do that. You know, you might be trying to get them to do it for some other reason, like to go out walking with the kids because it's, well, okay. It's so if you're trying to then change the idea of it being a way of loving them and caring for them, then you would get them into the habit, you know, with messaging that says, you know, while you're supposed to be getting your exercise, you know, practice safe walking with your kids. So get them into the idea that walking, and you can start to use the wording even and see how people respond to it. You know, if you start talking about it being a way of caring for their kids and loving their kids, taking them out and doing that with them, you know, do you find that you get an uptick?
Great. Couple more questions, Jay, and then we'll probably have to wrap. From Army and Ajax, how big of a sample size is effective for a pilot test?
Okay, if we're trying to measure the, if we're trying to actually measure like what percentage of people in the population agree or disagree or believe this or whatever, you have to normally get a fairly large number that levels off around 400. So it's not more than that, but you're going to be normally over 300, somewhere between 300 and 400. But when you're doing a t-test, statistics here, between group A and group B, so group B is the control and group A did something different. Are they different? Did it make a difference? You don't actually need that many. It depends on the variance of your group, so I can't give you an actual number. You'll have to work with your local university or college and get a sense of your group and how many you would actually need. But it can be, in groups of, well, I've done it with 100 and it's actually worked depending on the group, their particular variance and everything.
Okay, and then I think the last question, I'd love to hear more from Lisa in Niagara as well. I'd love to hear more about this idea of the range of messaging for different audiences versus focusing on one type of audience or message at a time.
Okay, so, if you're trying to send out your first message of the year and you're trying to gather up a whole bunch of parents who might be interested, maybe ones who are new to school or ones who are have recently moved, you might want to focus on an emotional message for that has pictures of those kinds of people, and see if that would help draw more of them into your funnel, if you like. But then you've got to show them, you can take them through the steps. You've got to be able to show them as they start getting into it that the practicalities are doable. And so that's like follow-up stuff. It could be a brochure. It could be, once they're at that point, maybe they contact someone. And so then at that point, someone can give them a different message, a different sheet or a different message that gives them more on preparation, if you like. When they're ambivalent, maybe something that gives them something on the pros and cons. Ideally, the Ontario program would develop different materials for each stage. And then you can't expect every individual school to do that. But you could then use different materials when you get the people to those stages. Does that make sense?
It certainly does to me, Jay, and I could say on behalf of the Parent Engagement Working Group that this sort of need for some standardized tools that every community and every project across the province could tap into is something that certainly we've become very aware of.
Okay, could be part of what you're asking for funding for.
Yes, exactly. We're not our Ontario Active School Travel Program is not currently resourced to develop and disseminate these kind of tools, but we're certainly the working group is looking at sort of crafting that a case for support, developing a case for support for seeking the necessary resources to create those kind of tools. Particularly, right. I think we're all increasingly recognizing for particularly those that address all those parents in that pre-contemplative stage, which I think is our toughest, is our biggest gap.
I'll just to remind you though that you can have the best messaging and really get people excited and drive them in, but if you haven't lowered the barriers sufficiently and you haven't got them to see the benefits in a way that really is going to hit them, as they were saying with the Metrolinx focus groups, like in a very like right here, right now kind of way, they'll get frustrated and we'll lose them.
Right.
So we have to be able to do both.
Okay, well, I want to thank, on behalf of everybody, Jay, I wanted to thank you for sharing all of this amazing experience and wisdom and knowledge with us this afternoon. We've although we've run over, we've held on to a good chunk of our audience this afternoon. So that's a sign that there really is a great deal of interest in this issue. So just to wrap up, again, reminding everyone, I think most of you on the call today are already network members. So of course we have our Slack channel to remain in touch with. I will be posting the resources from today's coaching session on there, hopefully tomorrow. And if you're not a member of the network currently, but did find your way into this coaching session and are interested in joining, you can email me. And of course, I have a typo in my email. It's greencommunitiescanada.org. But just flip me an email and then I will send you the link in order to to join the Ontario Active School Travel Network. So I want to say thank you to everybody. I hope that everyone is staying well and being safe, and will continue to do so. And let's all hope that in the not too terribly distant future, we can all get back to supporting all those journeys to school that we all feel so committed to. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.